This is how I started my ukulele build. This was a mahogany neck blank and I glued all the blocks together. And I traced out the size of the neck that I needed for a tenor ukulele. I used whatever saw I had handy, coping saws, pruning saws, whatever it took. This is a $20 Shinto rasp. It eats a lot of wood quick. I was able to carve the whole neck using that Shinto rasp in short order. If you don't own one, think about it. They're great tools. This is a contour gauge they use in the automotive world, but I used it to shape the neck off an existing neck that I had. And there's the rasp again. I'm shaping the neck still, making the headstock thinner. I think those contour gauges are more for carpentry. And there's the finished neck. And looking really good. This is a homemade fret saw, that miter box that I designed so I can make fret slots. And it worked really well. The screws I was able to adjust up and down to get the fret slot depth. But later in the video you'll see that I didn't end up using that fretboard. I didn't trust it. I taped down some sandpaper so I can level the neck, get ready to put the fretboard on. And I drill a couple holes in it, and I use those drills as holders. I slide them through the hole and you'll see. So that way, put some glue on, and then when I press it together I'm able to put those drill bits in, and it helps to center the fretboard. And then I bind it up with some monster rubber bands that I happen to have. People will use inner tubes, you can use tape, just make sure it's clamped tight. And the glue up time always takes a while, and it takes a while to dry. Wait till it dries thoroughly. And now I'm going to drill some holes into the headstock, and I just am sizing up what I need in order to get the tuners in. Only so I can take them back off to do other stuff, but at least the holes are in. Now I'm making a back strap, cosmetic strap, on the back of the ukulele, which is going to be 2 walnut stripes and some spruce. And I taped it down, didn't trust the tape, so I started breaking out some heavy duty clamps. I wanted to make sure that they stayed together. And Tip-On's really good stuff, but you still need some compression on it to make sure that you get a good tight seal, and that is what the back of the ukulele is going to look like, at least the stripe up the middle. Now I'm going to glue it into the Paduke back that I have here, and I got a flat piece of board down, that way I can glue it and compress it all together. And I was lucky, I was able to compress it together and glue it, and it came out very nice. And now it's time to trim that down, and I'm just going to use some scrapers. I couldn't use the rasp or anything like that. It's just no easier way to do it but just a metal scraper. It's actually a metal wax scraper for skis, but it worked for what I needed. Now it's time to glue the top together. I'll use the same process that I did with the back, where I squeezed the 2 panels together. You do have to make sure that the seam is nice and flush, that way it glues together tight and you have no holes. And I'm just weighing it down with anything I have. Trimming the sides off to make the back and top panels a little more easy to work with once I do the bracing. So I just roughly cut around just to get a shape that's easier to work with. Playing around with bending sides is the first time I bent my own sides, and that big silver thing is a heating iron, which is super hot, and I burnt myself. but you use a little bit of water on the wood, and up against the curved surface of the heating iron, you could bend it into the shapes that you need. That's a jig that I made to hold the sides so it works, and you can see the water right there. And basically you just keep working it and bending it until you get it the shape you need. One of the curves, I saw some splintering and I stopped, and I put some cleats on the inside. It didn't affect the outside. I was able to sand it down and not see it. I just didn't trust it, so I made sure to take care of it. Trimming the overall length, this way it butts together in my mold, that's the word I'm looking for, and gluing in the head block and neck block. Yeah, neck block and back block, don't know what they're called. Here's some kerfing. This is, you put this on, you glue it into place. It gives you more gluing surface for the top and back to go into place. And I just use clothespins in every little clamp that I have to make sure that they set in. And there she is, and you can see on the right where I put those internal pieces because I was worried about if it was going to crack or not. And I flipped it over, there they are on the other side. I do end up trimming those things down and making them nice and smooth. I tape some sandpaper down to my counter, and this way I can rotate the whole mold over the top of that so I can get a nice flush level surface for the top and sides. There's some bracing. I'm making my own braces out of some, I think they're spruce. And I mark off where I need it, glue them into place. I didn't worry about radiusing, and I used some weight there, as you can see, to put it down. I just made flat top and flat bottom. I didn't want to get involved with carving, having a radius. You can see where I carved the braces down to make them lighter weight. And on the back, I still left them a little bit thick. And that helps with the structure, of course, and keeps the top together from cracking. And I just used big rubber bands to bind it down after I glued it into place. And there it is, all glued up, looking really good. And it's time to get the top done. The top, same thing. I made my own braces, and that's a layout that I'm going for. And of course I had to trim it all down, and I had to trim it and make them nice and lightweight. The tape is there so that way when I peel it away from the glue, it leaves a nice clean surface. And there you go, I have all of the weight on top of the braces once they're glued down. And then once I pull off all the, you can see there, it's all nice and clean because I pulled the tape off and the glue came with it. And there's the carving chisel, and you keep tapping the top and you listen, and once you get on the resonation that you like, almost like a drum, that's why you carve the braces down, so you can, that's called tap testing, or tapping to get the right tone. But between my little Dremel and the chisels, I was able to get a very decent sounding top. I did have to make a hole, and you could see the can up there with the sandpaper, purple sandpaper wrapped around it. I dremeled it out, and then I just used that inside twisting motion to get it down, and then I put a walnut binding on it. Taping it down, or using the rubber bands to glue it down like I did with the back. And I'm taking the fretboard that I put on originally off using an actual iron for ski waxing. It definitely gets hot enough. And I had to clean that up, and then I purchased a fretboard that was pre-slotted. I didn't trust my math. And there you can see I got the pins in, and it's to hold it in place. And then I glue it and bind it just like I did before. Dremeling the sides in order to get a nice smooth finish. I used sandpaper, I used the Dremel tool, I used everything I had to make sure I had the top, back, and sides all nice and level and smooth. Dremel drums are great. Here is the rasp to take the fretboard back down to size. That rasp was very handy. There's me dry fitting the neck, making sure to get it as close as I possibly can. I haven't mastered that yet. I used that can with the sandpaper around it to get that contour on the fretboard, so it looked really nice. Figuring out where the fret markers go, and I have some Paduk fret markers, and yeah, the sandpaper on the body is so I can basically sand the angles that I need into the neck, and that way I can get a proper fit. And just by going up and down side to side, I can see if the neck is sitting straight, and I can also make sure it's sitting flush. And you can see a big gap there, and that was hard to take care of. Now I'm drilling holes for the dowels, and this is how you mount it. It's a doweling kit that I use that comes with the drill. It comes with some transfer punches, which you see there, and it just makes lining up the holes nice and simple without having to think too hard. And that's where I would need the 2 dots. There's where I need to drill the holes. Make sure you do the depth properly, so this way the dowels that you have fit and the neck sits in totally flush. And there's what it looks like open. And there it is, dry fit. And I dry fit it back and forth until I get it sitting at least the best that I can with the tools that I have. And you can see the holes there and the tape. That way when I glue it and I pull it apart, same thing. It peels the glue away nice and clean. This is a device that I made so I can slide the bridge back and forth, so I can figure out exactly where it needs to be. This way the open string and the 12th fret play in tune. And I just have it clamped down with a big huge clamp, and on the neck on the fretboard extension. And I have just a little piece of fret on the 12th, where it's supposed to be on the 12th fret, and this way I can make sure that I have the intonation right. This way the open string and the 12th fret plays in tune. Once I get the placement, I tape off where the bridge is supposed to be, and this way, once again, I will know where the fretboard goes, and when I finish, like I'm doing here, I don't have to get finished where I'm going to be gluing. So I tape off everything I don't need. I put True Oil on. I love True Oil as a finish. It's really easy to put on. You could rub it in light, you could put it on heavy. It's very easy to work with. And rags, you put it on with rags or brushes, however you want to use it. And it always comes out decent looking. And you can see the tape there, and that's, like I said, so I don't get tape on the gluing surfaces. This is where I'm drilling the holes to put the fret markers in. And I have that little stop on the drill bit, and this way I don't go too far in. And of course, put the glue in, put the fretboard markers in. In the 12th fret, they weren't perfectly centered. They looked it when I started. I tape off the area where the finish is, and where there's no finish in the middle is where the bridge is going to go. And basically glue it, put it down, clamp it up, and once again peel off the tape, and you have a nice clean surface. You do have to get a wet rag and stuff like that and wipe around and clean it up nice. And same for the neck. Same process. I use the tape, I peel it away, clamp it up nice and tight. And this is just a level that I put some sandpaper on, and I am leveling the fretboard. And I'm also using it to angle the fretboard correctly. And that is just a square little block with a piece of sandpaper that I am making sure to get a nice flat surface for the nut to go onto. And just keep sanding until you get a nice flat surface. I have a nut blank, which is just a square piece of bone that I put in later. I like to have a little curve on the frets even though I'm using a flat fretboard. This way when I either tap them in with a hammer, like you can see there's a hammer with a piece of leather over the top, and on the fretboard extension that's what I used. I just tapped them into place, and then the rest of the fretboard I used an actual fret press. And then I got my little cutting pliers. I cut the edges down, and then I file the edges of the frets flush to the fretboard, and then I put a little bit of angle on it. And there's a level on top, which I'm just leveling the top of the frets. And I put blue magic marker on it, and this way my crowning file, which you can see the octagon thing is, and this way I can make a nice crown onto the frets. And yeah, and then I just use light sandpapers, and I go and then I polish up the frets nice. And there you go, you can see it together. And now it's time to make the nut. Like I said, I have that square piece of bone. I cut it to the width, and then it's a matter of filing in where the strings are going to go, and then it's just a matter of shaping that with I use sandpapers, I used files, and that's what I do. And then to know the depth that you need to file it to, that's a half pencil. It's a pencil that's cut in half, and then I rest it over the frets, and then I just trace it side to side. And I know I need to go down to that pencil line to get the string height to where I like it. That is where the saddle is. Same thing, it's a blank. I need to cut it down, shape it, and lower it to the size that I need. Same method, sandpapers. This is a little awl that I just mark where the screws for the tuners are going to go. And this way, when I drill in later and put the screws in. This is a feeler gauge. I like to get about 20 thousandths or a little under the first fret in the string. This helps me to fine tune the nut slots. And once I have the nut slots in, I can go back with sandpaper or files and then carve it all down to a height that is very nice and comfortable to play and not in my way. And this is the finished product. Yes, this is the finished product. Now that it's done, I'll do a little sound sample, and you can hear what it sounds like, especially with the low G. The majority of ukes that I have, which is a lot, have a high G. The low G makes it sound a little bit more like a guitar. Brand new strings, they go out of tune fast.